What's going on, boys? I used to keep a dream journal, but it got too time consuming, so I stopped. I had nearly a year's worth of dreams in there, and I would read them off on channel sometimes, maybe on streams. I'm gonna start again, but only for dreams that bother me. I just had one. I woke up every hour for 3 hours, and that's all I slept, and I can't fall back asleep. So, I'll read it off to you. Alright. I don't remember the first part of the dream. I fell asleep listening to Jim's COVID streams, but I woke up when he played the Worms Crawl In, Worms Crawl Out song, which I'll link in the description. I'm not an imagey person, but that dying, rotting, and being consumed by maggots and worms image stuck out to me the first few minutes I was awake. The second part of the dream began with me in some university. I was going to classes, but I had that out-of-place feeling I get with the dreams about the staring people with eyes. When I got out of class, this professor, who was like this professor I know but don't understand, approached me. There were cops in the area doing paperwork. He handed me a small pamphlet/packet with a green cover, an American flag sticker, rounded corners, and some legal-looking designators on the cover. He said the pamphlet was very important. I'd need to fill it out and meet him after his next class. We had things to discuss. He instructed me explicitly not to speak with this Navy guy. While I was waiting for his class to finish, I visited the university cafeteria/dining hall. While I waited in line, I heard someone saying they didn't know who this name which isn't mine but I knew identified me guy is, but if there are problems, I better find him before he finds me or there will be problems. I walked toward the exit, but someone approached me and asked me whether I knew who that name who was me but wasn't me was. I said he was me. The guy stopped me and called back the table of men. They got angry and started threatening me, but I tried to tell them I wasn't supposed to speak with them, at least not yet. They were still angry, and I left. I met the girl who voices Ramlethal. She seemed to be kind of a friend. She asked me whether I was buying chocolate for the upcoming holiday, and I said I didn't know there was a holiday. She invited me to go buy some with her and her friends, and I accepted. During the drive, there was a hard cut to another image. This man and woman are walking together in some kind of a public building. Before they get outside, the man's neck extends. The woman stops and begins screaming. They're outside now. The man's head and neck keep extending, but his eyes and mouth pull back into his elongated neck, and the long mass becomes his new misshapen head. He falls to his hands and knees and becomes smaller, but still doesn't see what's wrong. The woman continues screaming, and now she's sobbing and holding him. Fur grows across his body, and she begins decreasing in age. In a moment, the man becomes a small dog and the woman becomes a little girl. Both forget what was happening in their previous lives together. They smile and walk on together as dog and little girl. I got the sense something malevolent made the change and altered their memories so they wouldn't know the difference, but I also sensed it didn't matter, nobody would ever know, and nobody could do anything even if they'd wanted to. The sun was setting on them in a small crowd of people. Something was wrong with the crowd. They were changing too. The buildings were changing. Everyone and nearly everything became dust. There was this sense of, this is the truth and there's nothing you can do. All that remained, as everything warped and turned to dust, was an image of a building. It looked like an upside-down pyramid or triangle, cut in half and stacked floor by floor, but the image wasn't clear. It was drawn in ash on white paper near some railroad tracks and other destroyed buildings. The sun was still setting and the sky looked green. That image realization disturbed me. When I came to, I was driving cross-country with some relatives. My aunt, uncle, cousins, and I made a few stops somewhere in nowhere areas at night. They got out and walked around and played, but I couldn't relax. Each area was heavily forested. One was a park and another was a gas station. When we reached our destination, I realized I'd been riding with that voice actress girl. We got out and entered a pharmacy to buy holiday chocolates. The holiday was a cross between Valentine's Day and Easter, but it leaned toward Easter. Everyone was buying boxes of chocolates for themselves. VA finished buying hers way before I did because I'd been shopping around. While I was in line, I realized I'd forgotten about that professor's class, our meeting, and my paperwork. I wanted to buy the chocolates, but I didn't want to waste any more time, if it even mattered. And I realized I didn't have my wallet. I tried to get VA's attention, but I couldn't see her and she wasn't paying attention. I stepped out of line and grabbed her shoulder. I explained we needed to leave. She was despondent and I couldn't see her face / she didn't matter anymore. When I made it back to the university, I entered the classroom. It was a small, old auditorium. I was following that one professor. The place was empty. He was preparing his notes. I crawled into a sleeping bag on the smallest pew furthest forward near the right wall. I was trying to sleep when I realized the place was full of people and a completely different professor, JBP, was lecturing. People were disgusted I was sleeping and taking up so much space. I felt defeated and knew I was doomed, so I tried to sleep a little more, taking up a little less space. But people became even angrier and more disgusted with me. I left. I met that one old ENTP professor I respect. I hadn't seen him in a couple years. When I met him again IRL, something seemed distant and off. When I met him in the dream, he seemed happy to see me. He was working on a car in a building by some railroad tracks above a boxcar. I tried to help him. He said some things my father would have said, complaining about Chevrolet. I laughed and tried to tell him my dad felt the same way, but he asked me to push the car left. He was going to bench press it to access something underneath. A little pressure got on him, but I tried to stop him because he clearly couldn't lift it. He said it was okay, that was supposed to happen. My father approached outside the window and started speaking, but I pushed and let the weight on the professor. There was a hard shift and he was bench pressing some weights on the other side of the room. The bar fell across his chest and he couldn't rack it because there was no rack. He was benching on the floor. The bar rolled down his body and snapped his right leg, but it snapped it sort of into place. His shin had been cracked forward beneath his skin before, but this snapped it backward. He seemed okay. I asked if he was okay, and he said he was okay. We both seemed confused but relieved. I entered the other room and sat down with the original professor and a cop woman. She was dressed like trash and looked like she'd been doing heroin, but I could tell she could say whether I lived or died. The Navy man from before entered, but he looked different. He was bald, his head bulged a little, and he was mentally handicapped. The woman explained someone told him I'd killed his family and he'd planned to shoot me to death and escape to Central America. Law enforcement found out and stopped his plan. To make amends, they would force him to pay me something amounting to $15 each month. There was a simple but confusing equation I couldn't understand. I didn't want to be around him. He looked like he wanted me dead, and I didn't blame him for feeling angry around cops forcing him to do things like that. In addition, the woman said, he was to sell me stolen goods at an extreme discount. He said he would hook me up with any electronics for cheap, no problem. He tried to leave, but the woman stopped him. "Mama loves you?" she asked, but she asked him in a forceful way. "Yeah," he answered. He left. I was scared. I wanted everything finished and gone, but I couldn't make everything stop. The woman dismissed me and I crawled out of the window and tried to walk home. I saw my family by a train station. They and many of my dogs growing up were there. This wild pack of dogs had killed most of the dogs I knew. The wild dogs were larger than normal dogs with shorter but taller snouts and their fur was short but fluffy. They were white, their backs were hunched, and they were covered in muscle. They were mauling the corpses of some of the dogs and preparing to kill the final one, Harley. Harley was one of the most interesting dogs we raised. She was shy and standoffish, but she became so only when the previous alpha died and she was forced into the position before she was ready. She used to be playful. She'd become serious and shy. She became friendlier and more people-oriented as she neared death, but that playfulness never returned. The wild dogs were mauling her and preparing to kill her, and my family was doing nothing. They couldn't because the dogs were too big and strong, and if they'd attacked the dogs would identify them as enemies and hunt them to their deaths soon after. That was assuming my family didn't die right there. Knowing it didn't matter whether I died, I rushed the dogs and knocked one off Harley. I mounted him and punched his skull in until my hands were bloody, and then the dogs rushed me. I don't remember what happened afterward, but I think they killed me or were about to kill me. I woke up scared and feeling like crying. The image of those people shifting into new forms and forgetting their old ones without their knowledge or consent, and that building drawn in ash stuck out to me. The build, fur, teeth, and eyes of those dogs did too. The mentally challenged man and the cop did. I felt scared and powerless. I couldn't go back to sleep and I was sweating. So everything about that dream or those dreams was awful, but they were one after another, and for some reason they just kept stressing me more and more and making me panic more and more. And that image of something warping people and altering their memories or their perceptions so they wouldn't even know anything had changed bothered me. And the sense in the dream was, this is truth. In the dream, at least, you'll never know what's real because something other controls your perception. It can bring people into existence, it can bring people out of existence. It can warp them and mangle them in ways they won't realize, and it can make the people who do realize forget and accept their new forms because with altered memories and perceptions they don't know any different. And under those circumstances, it doesn't matter whether or not anything exists. It doesn't matter whether or not anything really is anything because you'll never know. And if you think you know, something can change it and make it so you don't know. And there's nothing you can do about it. And all that'll be left is that image drawn in ash on white paper of an upside down triangular stacked building drawn in lines, maybe with some destroyed buildings nearby and a setting sun with a green sky. And I swear I've seen that building somewhere. Not in real life, but on an album cover. I'll link an album from an artist whose covers are made kind of in that style. But I could have sworn it was that dude, one of that dude's albums, and it wasn't. But it's, imagine you take a triangle, flip it upside down, cut it in half down the middle. Now draw lines horizontally up the triangle to make different floors, and take the smooth edges of the triangle and turn those into vertical lines going upward for the floors. and that was the building. And I swear I've seen that somewhere. And I don't know why that was the equation or the thesis or the synthesis of whatever that part of that dream's image was. I'll wrap this up here, but I wanted to talk about it somewhere because my dreams generally aren't very good or fun, but that one, there were a lot of images in that one, and like I said, I woke up wanting to cry, which I never really wake up feeling good, but rarely is it that stressed and panicky. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. And comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. Do you guys have any weird dreams? Or have you ever had a dream with an image that stuck out to you and seemed important? What did you think of it? How did it make you feel? What significance was supposed to be in it? Thanks again for watching, everybody. Really, we have a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun, in fact, you can open up a Word document and write down all the fun you have. But that's how much fun we have on this channel, and I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.